Okay, so today we're going to be looking at Infusionsoft versus ActiveCampaign. And honestly, if you just want the quick little analysis, go with ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is better in so many ways. It's cheaper. It's much simpler to use. Infusionsoft, we call that Confusionsoft because it's just if you're going to try and use Infusionsoft, you're going to have to be a developer. You're going to have to become an expert on Infusionsoft to get any sort of use out of it. ActiveCampaign you can set up fairly quickly. Even if I, or another consultant sets it up for you, you can sort of quickly go in there and understand how it all works. It's nice and simple to understand. Infusionsoft, it's kind of like layer on layer on layer on layer of an onion that you kind of try and figure out what all these different layers are, and you have to kind of dive into it. So let's have a look at some of these things that I like and dislike about Infusionsoft. ActiveCampaign, I'll sort of do a comparison between the two as we go. So first up, let's look at the contacts. Now, Infusionsoft has all these system fields built in from the get-go. You can't turn them off, you can't hide them, you just got them. I don't like that because 80% of the time, you're not going to use the majority of these fields. You're probably going to use first name, last name, email, and phone. That's for the most contacts, that's all you're going to use. ActiveCampaign, from the start, all you get for a system field are first name, last name, phone number, and email. That's it. The rest of these fields here, they're all, or most of these are all custom fields that you can just add. Okay, so there's none of that sort of bulkiness in the fields. They're not weighing you down with system fields. And that actually becomes really important later on because when you're working with the APIs and things, you don't want to have to sift through 50 different system fields to find the custom fields that you've added. It just adds time and complication. Particularly if you've got a phone field, they've got a phone field. You might have like a mobile field and they've got a telephone field or something, a landline field. And, it just starts to add complication. Infusionsoft, you can't rename a custom fields system field name, whereas in ActiveCampaign, you can rename that. You can change it. And that's important because sometimes in the API, all you see is the system name. And so if you've originally named it phone, and then you've changed it to, say, mobile, in Infusionsoft, you'll see mobile. In the API, you'll still see phone because that's what it is. You'll probably say phone 1 or phone 2 or something because phone is a system field in here. And so it won't have the same name. It'll have to have 1, 2, or 3 on it. And so that starts to add complication when you're working with the APIs and confusion. So I don't like that about Infusionsoft. They've got a whole bunch of fields in here that most people, are never ever going to put data into this. Most people never ever put data into this. And so there's no point having the fields. In utter honesty, the only point I can see of having the fields here is because it looks pretty when you log on, and it's a really good selling feature. Like when they show you the Infusionsoft system in their sales pitch, they've got all these fields and they're all filled in for all their test contacts, and it looks pretty because you've got all this information here. But to get data in, you have to collect it from the people, or you have to manually collect it from a phone call or something, So if you've got all these fields and you want to fill them up, you're going to have to get the data in from somewhere. And most people don't build that out. So there's no point having these fields in here. It's just bulk in here that you don't need. And they're just empty for most of the time. Now, adding notes, you've got sort of a couple of different things in here. You got like the person notes, which these notes just stay on the top and you can put whatever you want in there. And you got tasks and appointments. They've got their own little appointment booker for Infusionsoft. Not a fan of this. Not a fan. I'm just not a fan in general of systems having action description of systems having like all these features built in because they generally do a really bad job of having all these sort of add-on features. So we've got our little appointment here. It takes us back to the main contact page. Kind of annoying because I'm on this page here and I'm on that page because I want to stay on that page. And we can see here we've got our appointment coming up here. But we've got all these like little quirks in the system where I'll be on this page, I do something on this page, and it takes me back to this general page because it refreshes and it doesn't store what page I'm on up in the URL here or in the JavaScript apparently. So This is, we've got tasks or appointments here. We've got notes. We can add notes, see form submissions, email history. So you do see a lot of data here, which is good. ActiveCampaign, I prefer just their recent activities data. It is lacking sometimes, like when you want to go back a fair time in history. I think it only goes back 6 months or so. And so you can't always see all the data in here, which is a little bit annoying. They're probably going to fix it up at some point, I hope. But you can always see all the emails that you've sent, all the tasks, notes, etc. that you've added, conversations. Most of the time, you're just looking at email history. Most of the time, you're not really looking at what happened when 4 years ago. So 6 months history is actually pretty much all that you need for most of the time. And you've got your tags and things. It's just a much simpler layout than what Infusionsoft is. You've got everything here all in one spot. It's nicely laid out. It's more user-friendly. Infusionsoft has this kind of like ugly 90s sort of feel to it, like those old 90s HTML websites that didn't have any like prettiness to them. That's kind of where Infusionsoft is, that it was built a long time ago and they haven't really changed at all. And they're probably afraid to change because there's just so much that they would have to change in here. So we've got companies after that, contacts companies. In ActiveCampaign, companies are called accounts. I prefer ActiveCampaign's sort of view of this. It's just pretty, just looks nice. They do have some more system fields in here, but you can see they've only got 6 system fields, and they're kind of fairly important for a company. Whereas in Infusionsoft, you've got all these address fields, you've got everything else in there. We can add contacts to a company if we wanted to. In here, we have to go to a new tab though. In ActiveCampaign, it's all on the one page. Just add a contact, search for them. We can add tags to company, etc. So it's a bit of a muchness compared to ActiveCampaign, about the same. Then we've got opportunities, which is similar to deals in ActiveCampaign. So here's our deal in ActiveCampaign. We've got our tasks, notes, emails, etc. In Infusionsoft, we've got our deal here, our opportunity. And you can see here's all the deal information. So you can sort of see like, to me, this is sexier. This is easier to see the information because it's in like boxes and it's well organized and just makes sense. Here, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just not delineated nicely. There's no like nice boxes and things. And it kind of just all blends into each other. It's probably something that's more of a personal preference, but I find this is not as clean as the other, as ActiveCampaign. Referral partners, most people don't use that, so I'm not going to go into that, but that's basically setting up referral links and then tracking those. Zapier integrations, yeah, Infusionsoft integrates with Zapier. Not very well, I'm not a big fan of that integration. In fact, Infusionsoft overall for their APIs and integrations just isn't great. ActiveCampaign, fantastic integration for Zapier, Integromat, their APIs. They've got a whole bunch of built-in integrations for APIs and add-on systems like JustCall and Gravity Forms and all that. They integrate directly. And Calendly just joined the group there. So they've got a whole bunch of stuff that integrates really well with ActiveCampaign on a deep level, and it's kind of like a one-click integration. Whereas Infusionsoft, yeah, they have things that are built specifically for Infusionsoft, and they're usually for markets that have a lot of money, like doctors and healthcare and that sort of thing, because that's where the money is. And Infusionsoft is expensive on a monthly rate, and expensive to set up as well because there's lots of stuff to do. So Infusionsoft just tends to be really expensive for those sort of add-ons. So that's the CRM that we looked at. Then we've got our marketing side of things. And this is really the automations and broadcast email in ActiveCampaign. So look at our campaigns here. In fact, we'll just start with a pre-built campaign. We'll go find right campaign. And that way you can sort of see how these are built out. All right, we'll just go online store. And follow up with leads. Most people will have that one. Okay, this is going to take a little bit longer than I anticipated. When you go for a pre-built campaign in ActiveCampaign, it's a one-click installation. That's probably a good thing to show you actually, because in Infusionsoft, we had to go through 5 different pages to get to this campaign, and now we've got 3 different tabs open as well. It's a lot of stuff. In ActiveCampaign, create automation. Here's all of our automations here. And we just click on one, done, continue. And it just populates it. The complication that Infusionsoft adds to their system is just utterly nonsensical, useless. ActiveCampaign is just so simple, much easier to use. And whoever's designed ActiveCampaign's done a great job. Whoever's designed Infusionsoft, yeah. All right, so this is their Infusionsoft campaign, and we've actually probably chosen 2 very similar ones: customer winback sequence and convert leads. So yeah, similar sort of idea. All right, so tag applied, that's kind of a trigger over here, tag cancelled. And so we can view and edit that. We can change our tag here, or add our tag. Now, something with Infusionsoft I do like is that they allow you to build out, what the campaign is, and then you can fill it in later on with what exact tag you're going to use there. And it goes from a gray color to a green color when it's set up correctly. And one thing that does confuse people with Infusionsoft is these embedded campaigns. They've got this sort of overall campaign, like a master sequence. And so here's the trigger for that. Here's the 2 different goals that will end this sequence and anything else before it. Like if there's other sequences there and they achieve these goals, then they'll just simply jump to those goals. And then they might continue on with, say, another sequence, might be a post-sales, for instance. So you could build out your entire sales funnel in just one campaign if you wanted to. I'm not a big fan of that. I do prefer having it in individual campaigns, but Infusionsoft is built more for building out everything kind of in one huge tree like this, which has its advantages, has its disadvantages as well. So we'll say product was purchased, and then maybe I don't know, maybe they do a quote status after that. And so you can sort of if they have a quote status of accepted, maybe they have a little purchase of a consultation first, and then they have quote status accepted. If they just simply entered this and jumped and had a quote status accepted, they'd just jump straight there. They'd miss all this stuff in the middle. So there is benefit for that, and we can have multiple triggers as well, triggering out what we've got. So if we go another tag applied, trigger, and we can sort of do that, and that's going to start that as well. We could do a certain email gets opened, and then that starts this sequence. So it is quite flexible, and I do like that you can have multiple triggers. You can have multiple goals. You can map out, if they're getting this product tag goal, then they're going to not start this, and they're going to go to a different sequence, for instance. Or we could start this trigger, and we'll just delete this here, and that tag starts this over here instead. You can build fairly complex funnels with Infusionsoft, and it's a pretty good builder. I do like their builder, but where the complication comes in is with these nested sequences, because you've got this campaign, and a campaign is kind of like the overall goal, and then you've got these nested sequences, which is actually where the emails are. And so you got your start the sequence, here's the email, here's the wait, here's the email, here's the wait, here's the email, etc. And this sequence will just continue on until the contact achieves a goal. And so they'll start the sequence, they'll do these things, and then a goal will be achieved. If a goal is not achieved, then they simply don't progress through the funnel. So that has its benefits and its downsides. ActiveCampaign, they prefer you to just build out what's called a straight line, or what I call a straight line, where it's just a straight line. You've got a trigger, series of emails, and a goal. I do like my automations like that, because you can then just add contacts into any automation, any part of your funnel. You can just dump them in, and they'll start the funnel from wherever you add them in. And to be honest, it's just easier to understand and see the funnel when it's all built out in these sort of compartmentalized automations, rather than this huge automation with all this logic in it that everything happens in that automation, and then you've got all these little sequences and things in it. That gets really complicated very quickly. And and it's hard to see what's happening and what's not happening. Whereas ActiveCampaign, you can build them out individually. You could have 500 different mini automations if you wanted to, label them so they're all organized and you can find them all, name them all nicely so that you can understand what they do, and it just makes a lot more sense. So that's their campaign builder. Their email builders, they're pretty much of a muchness. I do actually prefer Infusionsoft's email builder, to be honest, but ActiveCampaign's email builder is pretty much the same. It's got a few extra options in it. So it's simple sort of email, images, text, drag and drop sort of builder, nice and easy. The customization is actually fairly limited in both builders, and there's a good reason for that, because they don't want you to heavily customize your emails. They don't want you to create these heavily graphics, custom, fancy looking emails, because they're just going to go to spam. And that's why they sort of limit you with what code and options you've got here to add, and what fonts you can use, and what images you can use, etc. So the defaults are good, because these are defaults that have minimal coding in them, and they're generally going to go into the inbox for your contacts. So you can sort of just drag and drop here on ActiveCampaign, same as what you do with the other builder, and yeah, all works out nicely for both of them. So not much of a difference there, but their campaign builder, ActiveCampaign, definitely wins in that regard. I much prefer their campaign builder. This is actually what causes the most confusion for most people, is the campaign builder here. Then we've got lead generation, email broadcast, just building out single emails really there. So we've got tracking on websites, etc., different lead sources for the websites, advertising, etc. Email templates, dynamic content, pretty good in both systems. It's about the same actually in both systems. So dynamic content over here, you put in a specific personalization tag and it will show whatever content you've got here. ActiveCampaign has a similar thing called global variables, and they also have custom fields. And so global variables, where are they? Under campaigns. Yep, message or manage variables. I call them global variables, which is a better name for them, honestly. So, they both have that feature. Then they both have forms. Both of their forms suck, to be honest. I never use either of their forms. I always integrate with a form builder, because form builders are built for making forms, and their forms are just, they look pretty, they work good, they've got conditional logic that you can add in, you can style them so they look nice with the website. These forms, they're not really built to be used on the front end of a website. They look hideous when you put them on a website, unless you know how to code CSS for them. Then the form is just going to look like a 90s HTML form. It's just, there's no styling or anything, and you're going to have to add styling to that, or your developer will have to add styling. So both of them have that sort of simple looking form. ActiveCampaign's kind of a little bit more modern, but it's not that much more prettier than Infusionsoft's form. So I use Gravity Forms or Jotform or Typeform for those, or Thrive leads for the opt-in forms. So you can just kind of ignore that feature. The reports, both systems' reports are okay. I'm not a big fan of them. Most of these CRM email marketing systems just have terrible reports. It's always a feature that they're lacking in. Don't know why, but they just don't seem to feel like people look at the reports, I guess. So yeah, there's not a lot of great reporting in either of these systems, so not much to look at there. Then we've got e-commerce. Not even going to go into that, because I think it's absolutely horrendous, their e-commerce system. Yes, it works. Just use Shopify. Shopify is built for that. It's the best at e-commerce. I don't know why you'd ever want to use Infusionsoft e-commerce. Just use Shopify and then integrate it. Yeah, just not cool. Then admin sort of stuff, settings, billing, etc. Yeah, they've got some great features that you can sort of customize there, but ActiveCampaign has the same. So at the end of the day, ActiveCampaign is simple, it's cheaper, it does the same sort of stuff that Infusionsoft does, and it's just easier to understand. Infusionsoft is called Confusionsoft. That's what we nickname it. Whenever someone it tells me they're using Infusionsoft, sorry, then they even call it Confusionsoft. Most of my clients, after they've used it for a little while, it's just this sort of nickname that it gets over time because it's just really hard to understand for most people and hard to use and hard to set up. And when they sort of give you that sales pitch and oh, it's amazing, you've got all this sort of stuff that you can see and do and all this sort of stuff. It looks great in the sales pitch, but you have to set all those features up. It doesn't come out of the box already set up for your business. You have to integrate everything into your business, and that takes time and it takes money and it takes a lot of effort to put all those systems in place. And so setting up Infusionsoft for most businesses will cost anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 to set up Infusionsoft. Whereas ActiveCampaign, you can set that up fairly easily for like $500 for like a real basic sort of setup, up to like 2,000-3,000 if you wanted something more advanced. And that's kind of the ballpark there. It's a lot simpler to set up, a lot simpler for people to understand. Infusionsoft, there's just so much in there, so much going on, but you have to change so many things to set it up. And at the end of the day, it's just not worth the monthly fee. Their monthly fees are exorbitant, really expensive for what you get. And I'm just not a fan of having these big, massive systems, these big, massive apps doing 100 different things because they do 100 things very poorly rather than doing one or two things really well. And ActiveCampaign does email marketing really well. They do their email automations really well, and that's really what I use ActiveCampaign for. SMSs, I don't really use ActiveCampaign. I don't use their CRM. I don't use their web pages. I don't use their forms. I don't use their reports. I just use the email automation and the emails. That's it, because that's what they do great. And then everything else I just sort of plug on with different add-on apps that do those things really well. And that works really well for me and my clients because you get the best of both worlds. And whereas if you're trying to use just one system that does everything, I can guarantee you that everything that it does, it's going to do it really badly, or to an extent that you're going to want to do something one day and it's not going to be able to do it. Or you're wanting to change it or code it or make it look pretty, and you're kind of boxed into whatever they've said is good, and that's it. You don't get any other option. Whereas if you sort of bolt on things, if you don't like what that bolt on app does, if you don't like that form builder, you just add a different form builder, one that does what you want to do and looks how you want it to look, and so you just kind of add that on. So that works very well for my clients. That sort of bolt on, compartmentalized building out of these funnels and systems rather than a huge umbrella system such as Infusionsoft. So I do recommend ActiveCampaign. Not a fan of Infusionsoft. I do work with it. I hate it. I don't like it. ActiveCampaign, 9 times out of 10, that's what I recommend. And yeah, if you've got any comments, leave a comment below, and I'll see you on the next video.